Well, let's look at these figures. The telecommunication sector contributing 16% in the second quarter of 2023 to the nation's GDP. That's up from 14.13% in the first quarter of 2023. Is this an impressive trajectory?
When you look at your GDP and then your inflation, and then you look at what they're saying that will be your GDP at the end of the year, that could only be that you could liken that to a very fantastic result, because if you have contributed about 1.63 to the GDP, and then you have a GDP that's going to slow down at 2.03 at the end of the year, according to the World Bank projection, and then the federal government projection of 2.34% at the end of the year, then you will say that they virtually contributed the largest quota to the GDP already.
Indeed. But what are the factors that led to this northward trend?
You mustn't forget that we still have a lot of people working from home. I mean, since the COVID-19 pandemic, everybody have gone patchwork digital. You and I, ordinarily before, I should be in your studio, but now we are doing digital.
And
all these are what they add to the economy. So definitely, I'm not surprised from the numbers we are getting from them, because it's expected, because this seems to be the only sector, the only service sector that is thriving in Nigeria at the moment. Because any economy, the service sector drives the economy. As it stands today, it's only the telecom service sector that is very relevant to Nigerian economy. And you know that that's one sector that maybe the price have remained the same in terms of the call price, the SMS price. They've not been that hike in price from this sector. So Nigerians are still enjoying that benefit. So definitely that sector seems to be the sector that drives every sector of the Nigerian economy. And it is the life wire of the Nigerian economy as it stands now.
But what about the tech sector? I know that the subsidy removal also may have contributed to these figures, looking at the fact that a lot of people now prefer to work from home instead of, paying for the high transportation cost.
It helped, and that's what I'm saying. It's the digital economy is more about the telecom space, the fintech space, and all that. So all of them are classified under the digital economy. They seems to be the one moving the economy as it stands now. So like I keep saying, those are the key drivers, and even with the lack of very good infrastructure, because you can't say we've gotten good infrastructure when it comes to telecom, the fintech, but because of our population drive, and because of the inclusion in terms of the use of telecom, because the telecom sector is one sector that drives inclusion, both in the rural and the urban. So definitely, it's a sector that is affecting the life of every Nigerian. And even if you look at, even in the financial sector, the telecom sector seems to drive the growth in that sector also. If you look at the results from all the banks and you look at the non-interest sector, it's been driven by the telecom sector. So definitely the telecom sector seems to be the key driver of the Nigerian economy. Like I keep saying, is the only service sector that is still relevant at the moment, because other service sectors are suffering from either high inflation, that cost of production, the high cost of goods and services on those sectors. So people have reduced the number of provision or whatever they do in some other service sector. But rather what you've seen a lot of people moving into the telecom space. Like you say, now it has gone to data. It's not so much about the calls that you make now. People are now making more use of their data, either by working home or even in terms of communicating with each other. People believe more in using their WhatsApp to call, and so definitely that also is one thing that's driving this sector forward.
Just like we are also using Zoom right now to communicate with you. But let's focus on some of the hiccups slowing down the growth of the sector. Barriers to broadband deployment in the country, ranging from the issues of right of way, fiber cuts, high capital requirement for deployment, and also multiple taxations and regulations. Are these challenges peculiar to the telecom sector, and how can they be tackled?
Well, when you look at multiple taxation, I think that's the only one that is not peculiar to them. Broadband penetration, when you look at fiber, fiber, the fiber you just talked about. Those are things that are mostly a challenge with them. You also have to look at the maps also that they fix in some of these places. You also look at the cost that they imbibe in terms of powering some of these their service sector, or their sector. I mean their service station. So all these, and the price of gasoline also, or diesel, has also gone up. So definitely those are things that are affecting that sector. But like I said, that still with all these things, the sector have not increased tariff in any of their services. So that is good. But I think the main problem with the penetration has to do with the NCC itself, and it has to do with they need to come up with a robust infrastructure. And also, when you talk about the multiple taxation, I think the president have said it, that it's one area that they are really working on, and that's why you have the tax consultant committee that was set up to look at multiple taxation. I'm sure they are going to look at the telecom sector also. Remember, this sector also enjoy waiver in terms of excess duties, which I think President Tinubu also have continue with that. I think the main challenge they have is with their optical fiber penetration, whereby they need to apply for licenses from states. I think they must find a way to work with all the states, especially to have an amicable selection for it. But for the broadband penetration, I think that lies strictly with NCC.
But you talked about increase in tariff, that they haven't increased their tariff despite all of the bottlenecks they are facing. You'd recall there was a time last year where they were going to increase their tariff if not for the intervention by the then President Muhammadu Buhari's administration.
I agree, but again, you can't blame them, because every sector have increased tariff. They are the only sector. And remember what's negated that was that the president said, look, I'm going to waive excise duties on any telecommunication goods. So he said, look, you can't have that. You either you pay the excise duty, or you also if you are going to increase your tariff, then we are not going to waive the excise duty for you. And they have to go with one. I think they felt that it was better for them to go with the waiver in excess duty than increment in tariff. So it was give and take. So it's not that they've done anything so extraordinary. I think the government looked at the importance of that sector to every Nigeria, and what increments in tariff will do to small businesses, SMEs, and also what it will do to me and you now that we are communicating via Zoom. That could have also increased our costs.
But how can all of these issues be tackled? We've talked about the challenges with, you talked about the solution to multiple taxation, of course, which a committee has been set up to look into, headed by Taiwo Oyedele. But issues with fiber cut, issues with the high capital requirement, and also the broadband deployment in the country, how can those be tackled?
When you look at the broadband requirement, that's a technical issue that has to do with laying of cable through the sea line and all that. And I think they will still have to work on that. When you look at broadband penetration, it's still the same thing. I think the main one they need to deal with is the area of charges that they pay for fiber optical fiber penetrate, or what I call fiber through the underground. I think that's one they need to address with the governors of the states. And so that's where we say that if you are going to call, if it's the state that should collect that, then the state should collect it, and then the federal government should let it go. So I think they need to sit down and talk, and both the state, the federal government, and also the telecom provider.
You've talked about the fact that this sector is the only sector that is currently working and driving the economy, and there are so many so many advantages that can be tapped into, especially for the growth of the economy. How can we leverage on all of these potential advantages the sector has to offer?
To attract foreign direct investment into that sector, and well, the president went to India India happen to be one of the countries that have the largest network of telecom experts, even globally. I thought I didn't see the president have any meetings in regard of attracting some of these experts into our country, and I think we need to look at that. If you look at Dangote refinery at the moment, about 90% of the expertise there are from India. So I thought the president should be talking about that in the telecom sector. I think we need to make sure that sector is able to attract direct foreign direct investors, and that could be a game changer. So they cannot run it alone because of the cost of funding, and that's why up to this moment, companies like the big companies seems to be the one that are making a lot of inroads. So the smaller companies are still struggling. So they need finances, and that the federal government cannot be the one to provide them. They will need cheap finances to be able to break through in other technology aspect of the telecom sector. So I think what we should do is to create the environment, make it enabling for them to attract foreign direct investors.
Thank you so much for the brilliant analysis, Mukhtar Mohammed, financial experts. Thank you for your time on the show.
My pleasure.